Hi YouTube, welcome back to Wtf Rc Cars. So this is going to be one of them crazy mad scientist type videos that I do. So we have the new Noble Pro, and I know a lot of guys like doing speed runs, and for various reasons they've had different issues with range on different radios, and the Noble Pro can do around 350-400 meters. But I know for some extreme speed runs it's not enough. So what I'm going to show you today is how you can get 6 kilometer range from a Noble Pro. Now this is not the same sort of video as using the FTR10 flight receiver. This is basically going to take the transmission from this, we're going to send it to this, then we're going to boost it to a crazy amount of power with this, and it's going to be using 2 receivers, and you're going to need a bit of wire, servo wire, to make up the cable, and you're going to need a way to power the receiver and this. This can be powered from the receiver itself, but you're going to be limited to 100 milliwatts output power. But if you powered this directly, so you'd have to power your receiver and this, but then you can have a full 2 watts of power, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're putting it through a beam antenna that's got dB gain, that's a hell of a lot of power and a lot of distance. So first thing we're going to need some servo wire. You're then going to need 2 little servo plugs. You're going to need a bunch of these connectors. So you've got the ends that go in your standard servo plug that's going to plug into your receiver, and then you want something along the lines of this where you can put the pins in, and that will allow it to connect into the FRM302. So the only other thing we're going to need to do, you need one of these receivers to be on newer software and one of them to be on older software, and we are going to need to set this up, so I will take you through all that on the PC. But first things first, we need to make a cable that will go from his receiver to the socket on the back of this module. See if I can get this out of its box. So on the back of this you got a bunch of pins, and we're going to be using them, but we need to make a lead. So first thing we're going to need to do is separate the cable. Because we're going to have to get some ends on this. Let's see what we got. I'm going to need to split them a bit more, make it easy. Let's get a nice end on them. Then you want to strip a bit at the end, so do that any way you like. With your teeth is probably not the best way, but I'm not sure where I've put my wire strippers. Now if you want to know which way round you put these, you can either find a servo, find the pin out on them. If you look on a servo, or like on this BEC, you can see which way the wires go into plug. So they're all wired same. You basically have negative on one side, positive in the middle, and the signal wire on the outside, and it's always negative to the bottom of the open side of the plug, so the side where you can see the pins. So on this one, you've obviously got your pins inside your receiver, so we're going to need the little plug ends to go on this. And you can buy these servo plug cables from Amazon, eBay, AliExpress. They're pretty much available anywhere. Right, so what I find easier to do on these is get your little crimp into the crimping tool, get it lined up, just carefully start it squashing down. Make sure it's not going to squash the actual plug side of it, and then you want to feed your cable in. Make sure you don't get any stray ends. So just feed the cable into it and then crimp. And it does seem to make quite a nice tidy job of it. So that's as negative. And again, you've got a slightly wider side on your crimps depending on the exact make and model. But they do a pretty good job, and it seems to be quite consistent, so I'm quite happy with these crimps. So that's got 3 of them on. And then if you look at your servo plug, now if you've got a Spectrum receiver like this one, they don't have the little tabs on, so you're going to want to get the servo plugs with no tabs, but I don't use the Spectrum ones in anything. So again, if you look at a normal plug, you've got your negative wire, then your positive, and then space for signal. So if we start feeding these in, should get negative, and then we get as positive wire, and then a signal, and then depending on what plugs you've got on these, I just like to make sure they pushed all the way in. And these are quite a tight fit on these plugs, but I do like them because they push right down into them, and they do kind of, they seem to lock a bit better than some of the others I've tried. And you basically just want to push them down until they're all the way home, and then you know they're going to make good contact with the pins once we get it fitted. So that's one side done. Then on to the other. Now this is where you're going to have to pay a little bit of attention. So again, we're going to separate the wires. And I just so happen to have a perfect gap in my teeth that strips wires. Comes in really useful. Probably not advisable. And probably not good for enamel on your teeth, but I've been alive 40 odd year and I've got no fillings, so can't be doing them too much harm. So again, I want to get these in place. Start your crimp. Get your wire in place and crimp it down. You can always check, just make sure it's gone in properly. And we'll get his final one. I did warn you this is going to be a bit full on mad scientist, so and that's the final one. Right, if you check in the instructions for this, it does tell you the pin out. So basically the pin out, as you look at it that way, is top we have so it's ppm, then UART, then VCC, which is your 12 volt, then ground. So we're going to need to make us little connections up, and we're going to want the top one that's going to be a signal. So that one is definitely going to want to go in and be the top connector, which is ppm. Then you want to miss one, and that's going to be our 12 volt positive. Then we're going to go one down from that, and that is going to be as negative. Let's see if I can get these pushed in. I'll try and do it without stabbing my fingers. And because of what type of plugs these are, you can just pull them through. So that's what cable we're looking at making. We've got one side that will go into CH1, and you've got a little P, and then the other side will go in, and you want this that way round, and you want white cable to top, miss one, red cable, and then black cable underneath that. That will get us as connection. So what we're going to do is be transmitting from this to this, sending the signal via ppm to that. That is then going to be boosting it out to this, which is going to run your RC. So next thing we're going to want to do, we've got his cable made. Now you are going to need some way of powering that receiver and that. You have got an XT30 connection, which you will have to use for high power output, but you've also got a switch here that's internal external power. If it's on internal, it's going to be powering off of this, which means you can, I'm going to be using this BEC just to make my life easier. So basically any port on here you can put power into. So I'm just going to be putting power into channel 4. I'll do that on both of the receivers. Then I'm going to be running that off the battery. I'm going to be putting this into channel 1 on the receiver that is going to be bound to the Noble, and then I'm going to be connecting that into there. So next thing what we need to do is make sure that these receivers and this are all on the correct software. So let's shoot up to the computer and I'll show you how to get that done. Right, so first thing we're going to want to do is check the firmware on the FRM302. So you want to right click on your desktop and then click new. You can do this in Windows 10 or 11. Don't know if it'll work on Windows 7, never tried it. So if you make yourself a folder, you can call it anything you like, stick that on your desktop. Then what you're going to want to do is browse to Flysky's website. So it's www.flysky-cn.com. Then you're going to want to click on products. You're going to want to scroll down and you're going to want to go to RF. We're going to click on there. You're going to click on the FRM302. And then we're going to go to downloads and upgrades. Now if you look on here, if it's like mine, you've got the EU version. So if you scroll down on the instructions, you'll see there's nothing about changing the power settings. So if we look at the user manual for the non-EU, if we scroll down, you have power adjustment. So it says that the power of the device can be set between 14 dBm to 33 dBm, 24 milliwatts to 2 watts. Adjustable level is 25, 100, 500, 1 watt and 2 watt. It says the default power output is 100 milliwatt. Please use an external power supply in order to make sure the RF module is getting enough power. If no external power supply is connected, so it looks like the maximum is 500 milliwatt if you're just running it off the receiver and not from an external power source through the XT30 power connection. So this is the bit you're going to need to take note of. UART, that's when you've got it fastened to an actual transmitter that can control the module. We're using it in ppm. So to get into the power settings, once you've got it powered up, you hold the function button on the device itself for 3 seconds. It'll enter the adjustment mode. Tap the function button to cycle through the power levels. So 1 flash is 25 milliwatt, 2 flashes is 100, 3 flashes is 500, 4 flashes is 1 whole watt, so 1000 milliwatt, and 5 flashes, is 2 watt or 2000 milliwatt. Once you've got it to the mode you want, you press and hold the button for 3 seconds, it saves it, exits, and then it's in transmission mode at that power. So what we're going to need to do is download the software. So choose where you want it. I've already got it downloaded, but you can just save it. So basically it's going to download this. What you're going to want to do then
is make sure your FRM302 is switched on the bottom to internal power. Make sure you've got an antenna on it just in case, and then you just plug it into the micro USB socket. You don't need to press anything else. Your PC will just detect it, and the light on the transmission unit will flash red. So then you can just double click on the update. So it'll pick up the device. It says ready for update, tells you what software version it is, and tells you what hardware version it is. And then it says, we've got a disclaimer, factory preset transmission power of this product is -20 dBm. Please adjust in accordance with your local laws. So you click update, and it just goes through the update process. It says it's programming flash. Your light on your unit will now be flashing yellow as it goes through and does it. Once it's finished, the light will go solid blue, then power off. And then it'll just flash. You'll see the red Flysky logo, and it'll be flashing blue. Once it's flashing blue, you can just unplug the device. And then if you plug it back in, it'll then go into update mode again, and it'll detect, so you know it's all working. So that is the actual device itself updated. Now we need to look at the two receivers. Right, so to upgrade the receiver that's going to be connecting to your NB4 or your Noble Pro, by far the easiest way to do this is from the controller itself, because it's a supported receiver on both. So you're going to want to go to my channel, and you're going to want to scroll down to the playlist. You're going to want to go view playlist on the NB4 receivers, and then you're going to look for the NB4 firmware upgrade guide. Now if you're buying one of the FGR4 receivers anytime now, it's probably just going to bind straight to it anyway. If it doesn't bind to your controller, then just follow this video and it'll show you exactly what to do. It's very straightforward, but the one that's going to be complicated is the downgrade one. And I believe at the moment the only way to do this is through an NB4, because I don't believe the Pro is supported by the downgrade software. So we're going to set the one up to connect to the FRM302, the one that's going to bind to that. We're going to set that up using the NB4, not the Noble Pro. We want to go back to Flysky. And then again, we're going to go to the NB4, and then downloads, and then we're going to want to look for receiver updater downgrade version. So we're going to click on that one. So let's see if it'll let us download that. Can we click download and download the entire thing? Should be able to. Come on Google Drive, you can do it. So then you're going to go to your same folder. So on my desktop I've made a Noble Pro folder. We're going to download it to that. Once it's finished downloading, we can then minimize it. Just got to wait for that to finish. There we go. And then again, right click. You need to extract it, and then you can delete it. So this is the downgrade version. So we want to start this one again with your controller connected to the PC. So once you've got it set up like this, we're then going to power the receiver up that is going to connect to the range booster. and you want to put your bind plug in update mode on it, turn it on, you'll get the lights flashing in the pattern that they do for update. And then if we scroll down, we're going to upgrade it or downgrade it depending on what you've been using it in to version 1.11. So make sure that this is the only receiver that's powered up, because you don't want to be accidentally updating the wrong receiver, because you're not going to get it all connected then, and it's not going to make an awful lot of sense to you. Make sure mine's in upgrade mode. There you go. So that is the receiver successfully downgraded. So we've now got one receiver in upgraded mode, which would mean it'd bind to your transmitter. We've got one receiver in downgraded mode, which means that will then work with the range booster.
Right, so that's the one that we've got on the newer firmware. That's the one that we've got on the older firmware that's going to be compatible with this. So the newer firmware compatible with your Noble Pro, older firmware compatible with this, and we've got all this set up as we'd like. So how we're going to power these. First thing you need to do is you want your new firmware receiver to be bound to your transmitter. So we're going to put the bind plug in, we're going to connect it to power on any of the ports, and we're going to power it up. Then we're just going to go to his controller, we're going to go to his RX set, we're going to go bind, leave it on classic, bind.
Binding successful.
That has got that part of his link working. The next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to RX set, you're going to want to go to RX interface protocol, and you're going to want to change it from PWM to PPM, and then just back out of that menu, and I'll put a picture of the menu so you can see where we need to get to it. Then we're going to take his link cable, connect that to channel 1, and it's the one that says P. Then you're going to plug it into his box, and you're going to have white cable to top, miss one, positive, negative. So let's turn that off.
Signal lost.
Get this connected.
Signal lost.
Then you're going to disconnect your bind. We're going to put his bind plug into this receiver. This is the one on the older firmware, and we're going to connect power to it. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to power this up, so you can either have this running off your car, this off a battery, however you want to do it. You're going to need this set to internal power. You're going to turn it on with the bind button held. It's going to flash, and then it's going to lock solid green. That's now bound to this receiver, so we can drop the power off.
Signal lost.
We can disconnect the bind,
Signal lost.
and I'll just move the power to channel 4. So let's get two receivers. We'll have two servos, sorry. So we got that one, which is going to be as ESC or throttle. What on earth is that servo on? That's not going to fit on. Let's try and get you a servo on so you can see, just see what's happening with these. And so that one is going to represent either as throttle or as ESC. This one will be as steering. So now we've got all this set up. So that's all powered on. So we're transmitting from here to this. This is then coming out of this and to this receiver. So we've got a steering and a throttle. If I get them the right way around, that's the one in channel 1. So that's always going to be a steering. And that's going to be a throttle. Do not power this up without an antenna on it. It has got fail-safes built in, but you're going to damage it. You do get a bright red Flysky logo as well, which is pretty cool. So, all you're going to need to do this is a power source for the range extender, which that, let me just check, but on you're restricted to 100 milliwatts if it's running just what they call internal fed power, and that can run from 5 to 10 volt. So if you're powering it off the receiver, 5 to 10 volt, you can power it from 5 to 28 volt when it's running off its external connector at the bottom, and that's an XT30, and it's just positive and negative feed in. If you power it off that, you can then get a full 2 watts power out of it. Now, where this gets interesting, so this has probably got a bit of gain, but you can use the FRC antenna, and this is a directional beam antenna. So by screwing that off and putting that on, you can now set that up to run downrange, and you've pretty much got a kilometre range. So you can do what you like with your speed runs. You're not going to lose range on it, and that antenna does need to point towards your car. It don't really matter where your car is. You're gonna get to it, and you're not going to lose signal. But for me, I think what I would do is probably Velcro the receiver to that, and then find a nice little battery pack to power it all off. You can use any of your LiPos up to 28 volts, so pretty much any of your LiPos, and just get an adapter, because it doesn't draw a whole lot of power. But hopefully you guys have fun with that. For speed running, I think this is pretty much a kind of just Flysky's just gone, oof, you're done. You're never ever gonna have a range issue. Bit of a spoiler. Let's try an NB4, because we know it works with Pro. So where's the NB4? So let's get an NB4.
Welcome to Noble.
Now, where have I put my bind plug? So we're going to want as bind plug. We are going to want to go model memory. Let's choose a blank one. So we choose a blank model memory. We'll go to number definition, set it to 4 channel. RX set, bind classic.
Binding successful.
Then we've got on the receiver set menu, it's RX interface protocol, PPM. So we'll back off that. And if you're just swapping controllers, don't forget you're only binding to that. So the link from that to that is still all set up. So in theory, this setup will work on the Pro and the NB4. Please be sensible with it. And don't go turning the power up on this to anything that would be illegal in your country or region. Have fun. You've been watching Wtf Rc Cars. Thanks again. If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. and I'll catch you guys again in the next one.